Armed with the Council's intel and a fat bank account, Jeffrey charted a course for the Outer Rim. His first stop was the Nexus, a space station that made Mos Eisley look like a retirement home. Max docked the Odyssey in a shady berth, and Jeffrey disembarked, keeping one hand on his blaster. He wove through the crowded promenade, past spice dealers and slave traders, until he reached a dingy bar called the Rusty Reactor. Inside, a four-armed Zargonian was polishing glassware with his many appendages. "Zix, you ugly bastard," Jeffrey called out. "Got time for an old friend?" Zix grinned, revealing a mouthful of jagged teeth. "Jeffrey, right, I thought the Great Purge got you." "Not fucking likely." Jeffrey slid onto a stool and produced a dusty bottle from his coat. "Macallan 25 from Earth that was, interested?" Zix's eyes widened. He snatched the bottle and poured 2 fingers, savoring the aroma. "What do you want to know?" "So I'm tracking a rogue Jem'Hadar. Goes by Karlok, stole something big and vanished." Zix downed his whiskey and smacked his lips. "Karlok, bad news. Word is he was last seen in the Delvian system. Nasty place. Only pirates and scavengers go there." Jeffrey stood to leave, but the door burst open. A squad of Jem'Hadar mercs stormed in, led by a scarred warrior, Juno, the Council's lapdog. "Going somewhere, human," Juno growled. Jeffrey reached for his blaster, but Juno held up a hand. "Wait, I'm not here for you. I want Karlok." Juno shook his head. "I'm here unofficially. Karlok and I have a score to settle. I can help you find him." Jeffrey hesitated. Trusting a Jem'Hadar was like petting a rabid dog. But Juno knew Karlok, knew how he operated. "Fine," Jeffrey said at last. "But if you fuck me over, I'll space your sorry ass." They blasted off for the Delvian system, a cosmic junkyard of asteroids and abandoned mines. Jeffrey piloted through the debris field, following Juno's directions to Karlok's last known hideout. But as they neared an old mining facility, a squadron of Jem'Hadar fighters swooped out of the asteroids, cannons blazing. An ambush. "Hang on!" Jeffrey wrenched the controls, sending the Odyssey into a wild spiral. Juno manned the guns, returning fire, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Alarms blared as the shields buckled under the onslaught. Jeffrey gritted his teeth. This was going to be a rough ride. The Odyssey shuddered as Jeffrey yanked the ship into a barrel roll, narrowly evading a barrage of plasma fire. Juno unleashed a volley of retaliatory shots, striking one of the Jem'Hadar fighters. It exploded in a brilliant flash, sending debris careening through space. "There's too many of them," Juno shouted over the cacophony of alarms. Jeffrey gritted his teeth. "We just need to punch through their line and get to the station." With a burst of acceleration, the Odyssey surged forward, weaving through the enemy formation. Jeffrey pushed the engines to their limit, the ship groaning under the strain. Juno fired relentlessly, taking out 2 more fighters, but not before they scored a direct hit on the Odyssey's port wing. Smoke filled the cockpit as the ship listed to the side. Jeffrey fought to maintain control, his knuckles white on the controls. "We're not going to make it like this," he growled. "We need to find a place to set down and make repairs." Juno scanned the nearby asteroids, his eyes narrowing. "There," he pointed to a large pockmarked rock. "An old mining facility. Should have a hangar bay we can use." Jeffrey nodded, steering the battered ship towards the asteroid. They touched down in the hangar, the landing struts creaking under the weight. As the engines powered down, Jeffrey grabbed his blaster and headed for the airlock. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The facility was dark and eerily silent, the air thick with the stench of decay. Jeffrey and Juno moved cautiously through the corridors, their footsteps echoing off the rusted metal walls. Suddenly Juno held up a hand, signaling for Jeffrey to stop. He pointed to a faint light emanating from a doorway up ahead. They crept forward, blasters at the ready. As they entered the room, a holographic figure flickered to life before them. It was Karlok, his scarred face twisted into a sneer. Juno snarled, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Karlok, you bastard! I'll see you dead for what you've done." The hologram shimmered as Karlok leaned forward. "Ah, yes, your brother. Such a pity, he died screaming, you know, begging for mercy. Juno roared in rage, firing his blaster at the hologram. The bolts passed harmlessly through, scorching the wall behind. Karlok chuckled. You can't stop me, Juno. The superweapon is just the beginning. Soon the Jem'Hadar will rise and the Council will fall. And you, he pointed at Jeffrey, you think you can stop me. You're nothing, a relic of a dead race. The hologram faded, leaving them in darkness. Juno slammed his fist against the wall, his breath ragged. Jeffrey placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll get him, Juno. I promise. They searched the facility, looking for any clues to Karlok's plans. In a hidden laboratory they found the remnants of his twisted experiments, tanks filled with viscous fluid containing the malformed bodies of his bio-engineered soldiers. My God, Jeffrey whispered, if he unleashes these things... Juno's face was grim. We have to stop him, no matter the cost. As they prepared to leave, a blinking console caught Jeffrey's eye. He accessed the data, his eyes widening. Juno, look at this. It's a transmission. Coordinates for a secret council research station. They're developing a countermeasure to the superweapon. Juno leaned in, studying the readout. That must be Karlok's next target, but the station, it's located... In the heart of a supermassive black hole, Jeffrey finished. Fuck me. Max, plot a course for these coordinates, Jeffrey ordered, strapping into the pilot's seat. We're going to need to use that experimental hyperspace drive. Jeffrey, the risk of navigational error within the black hole's gravitational field is... I know the risks, Max, just do it. The Odyssey tore through space, stars stretching into infinite lines, as they pushed beyond the boundaries of conventional physics. Jeffrey's stomach churned as the ship shuddered, the black hole's immense gravity threatening to tear them apart. They emerged from hyperspace, the research station looming before them, silhouetted against the swirling accretion disk of the black hole. And there, amidst the chaos, was Karlok's fleet, already engaged in a fierce battle with the station's defenses. Jeffrey wrenched the controls, sending the Odyssey into a dizzying spiral through the chaos of the space battle. Plasma bolts sizzled past the viewports as Juno fired the ship's cannons, blasting Jem'Hadar fighters into oblivion. The black hole loomed before them, a swirling vortex of darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. With a burst of acceleration, Jeffrey punched through the enemy lines, weaving between the massive hulls of Karlok's warships. The research station grew larger in the view screen, its angular silhouette a beacon of hope amidst the destruction. They docked in a shattered hangar bay, leaping from the airlock with weapons drawn. Alarms blared and sparks showered from ruptured conduits as they raced through the embattled station, following the schematics Max had downloaded to their HUDs. The door to the research lab hissed open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. Scientists hunched over consoles, desperate to safeguard their work as the station shuddered under the onslaught. In the center of the room stood an Arcturian, his bulbous head pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Dr. Zorvax. You must be Jeffrey Wright, Zorvax said, his voice a reedy whistle. The council said you were coming. Doctor, we need the countermeasure, Jeffrey barked, holstering his blaster. Where is it? Zorvax gestured to a pedestal, upon which rested a shimmering sphere of pure energy, the AI in its nascent form. It's not complete, the doctor fretted, his long fingers twitching. To reach its full potential, it requires... A human mind, Jeffrey finished, understanding dawning. That's why the council needed me. Zorvax nodded. The fusion of human intuition and artificial intelligence, it's the only way, but the process is dangerous, untested. Your mind could be lost, overwritten. I'll do it, Jeffrey said, his jaw set. He stepped towards the pedestal, the AI's glow reflecting in his eyes. Jeffrey, wait, Juno grabbed his arm. Let me. My people created this monstrosity. It's my responsibility. Jeffrey shook his head. No, Juno, this is why I'm here, why I survived the purge. This is my purpose. He placed his hands on the sphere, and the world fell away. His consciousness expanded, merging with the vast network of the AI. It was like standing in the heart of a star, a being of pure energy and thought. "Jeffrey Wright," the AI spoke, its voice a resonant hum. "Your mind is extraordinary, so much potential waiting to be unlocked." "I need your help," Jeffrey said, his mental voice echoing in the digital void. "Karlok's superweapon—" "I see it," the AI whispered. "A device of terrible power. But together we can stop it. Your creativity, your human spark. It will guide my calculations, allow me to evolve beyond my programming." Images flashed through Jeffrey's mind. Schematics, energy matrices, quantum fields. The AI was feeding him the knowledge to create the countermeasure. He could feel his own thoughts flowing back, sparking new pathways, new strategies. They worked in a fever dream of collaboration, human and machine in perfect symbiosis. But in the physical world, mere seconds had passed, and Karlok's forces had breached the lab. Juno fired into the smoke and ruin, his rifle bucking as the Jem'Hadar super soldiers poured into the room. A plasma bolt struck the pedestal, and Jeffrey screamed, his body convulsing as the AI's energy surged through him. Zorvax frantically worked the controls, trying to stabilize the merge, but the feedback was tearing Jeffrey apart. Through the haze of pain, he could see Juno fighting hand-to-hand with the super soldiers, a whirlwind of blood and blades. The station shook, alarms shrieking as Karlok's ship latched onto the hull like a monstrous parasite. "Jeffrey, you must focus," the AI urged. "We are almost there, just a little longer." Jeffrey gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of his will into the merge. He could feel the countermeasure taking shape, a complex web of algorithms and energy fields designed to neutralize the superweapon's destructive power. But the strain was too much. His heart hammered in his chest, his vision tunneling. He could taste blood on his lips. Distantly, he heard Juno cry out in pain, saw him fall beneath a tide of armored bodies. "Now, Jeffrey," the AI commanded, "release the countermeasure." With a final surge of effort, Jeffrey unleashed the full power of the AI. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the station, a shockwave of quantum force that rippled across the battlefield. Karlok's fleet reeled as the superweapon flickered and died, its destructive potential neutralized by the human-machine fusion. Jeffrey collapsed to the deck, smoke rising from his skin. The AI's presence faded from his mind, leaving him hollow, exhausted. Juno dragged himself to Jeffrey's side, his armor shattered and blood-soaked. "Is it over?" Juno rasped, his voice thick with pain. Jeffrey managed to nod, his vision blurring. "We did it," he whispered. "The weapon disabled." But even as he spoke, a cold dread settled in his gut. Karlok's ship was still out there, and the rogue Jem'Hadar was not one to accept defeat. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Jeffrey struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Juno. They limped back to the Odyssey, supporting each other through the wreckage of the station. As they blasted away from the black hole, the remnants of Karlok's fleet regrouping in the distance, Jeffrey knew that this was only the beginning. The Council had their countermeasure, but Karlok still had his army of super soldiers and a burning desire for vengeance. Jeffrey and Juno had made a powerful enemy today, and they would need all their skills, all their resolve, to finish what they'd started. Jeffrey slumped in the pilot's seat, his body aching, his mind reeling from the merge with the AI. Juno sat beside him, nursing his wounds in stoic silence. They exchanged a glance, a wordless acknowledgement of the challenges to come. "Max set a course for the Nexus," Jeffrey ordered, his voice rough with exhaustion. "We need to resupply, gather intel. Karlok's still out there, and he's not going to stop until he's destroyed everything the Council stands for." The Odyssey banked away from the black hole, its engines flaring against the starfield. Jeffrey closed his eyes, the weight of the galaxy settling on his shoulders. He had a feeling that this was only the first battle in a long and bloody war, a war that would push him to the very limits of his human endurance. With Karlok's fleet in disarray, Jeffrey and Juno seized their chance. They boarded a shuttle and rocketed towards the warlord's flagship, a monstrous Jem'Hadar battlecruiser bristling with weaponry. As they approached, the ship's defenses came to life, filling the void with a hail of plasma fire. Jeffrey gripped the controls, his reflexes synced with the AI thrumming in his mind. He jinked and wove through the barrage, the shuttle's shields flaring with each near miss. Juno manned the weapons, unleashing a salvo of missiles that punched through the battlecruiser's hull, opening a breach. They plunged into the ship, the shuttle skidding across the hangar deck in a shower of sparks. Jeffrey and Juno leapt out, weapons ready, as alarms blared and Jem'Hadar soldiers poured into the hangar. Jeffrey moved with inhuman speed, his AI-enhanced reflexes making him a blur of motion. He fired his blaster with one hand, the other interfacing with a control panel, overriding the ship's security systems. Doors slammed shut, cutting off reinforcements as Juno laid down a withering barrage of cover fire. They fought their way through the ship, a running battle that left a trail of destruction in their wake. Jeffrey marveled at his new abilities, the way he could anticipate the enemy's moves, control the ship's systems with a thought. The AI whispered in his mind, guiding him, empowering him. They breached the bridge, the doors exploding inward, and there amid the smoke and ruin stood Karlok, a plasma sword blazing in his hand. His elite guard fanned out around him, bioengineered monstrosities bristling with weaponry. "Welcome, human," Karlok sneered. "You fought well, but it ends here." Juno roared a challenge and charged the super soldiers, his rifle spitting fire. Jeffrey turned to face Karlok, his own plasma sword igniting with a hiss. They clashed in a flurry of blades, plasma scorching the air. Karlok was fast, his sword a blur, but Jeffrey matched him stroke for stroke, the AI guiding his hand. They dueled across the bridge, smashing through consoles as the ship shuddered around them. "You think you can stop me?" Karlok growled, his blade locked with Jeffrey's. "I am the future. The Jem'Hadar will rule the galaxy, and I will be their emperor." Jeffrey gritted his teeth, pushing back. "Not on my watch, you bastard." Karlok laughed a harsh bark. "And what of your friend, Juno? Does he know I have his brother, that I've kept him alive all this time?" Across the bridge, Juno faltered, his eyes wide. The super soldiers pressed their attack, driving him back. Jeffrey saw the anguish on Juno's face, the rage and despair warring in his eyes. He knew the Jem'Hadar would never stop, never give up his vengeance. With a roar, Juno surged forward, his blade a whirlwind as he carved into the super soldiers, fighting to reach his brother. Karlok pressed his attack, driving Jeffrey back towards the reactor core. The heat was intense, the air shimmering. Jeffrey could feel the AI surging within him, analyzing, calculating. "There's no way out, human," Karlok snarled. "You've lost." But Jeffrey saw it now, the only path to victory. The reactor core, the beating heart of the ship. If he could damage it, overload it. He locked blades with Karlok, their faces inches apart. "Maybe," Jeffrey growled, "but I'm taking you with me." With a burst of strength, he shoved Karlok back, towards the seething reactor. The warlord's eyes widened, realization dawning, but it was too late. Jeffrey unleashed a barrage of blaster fire, the bolts slamming into the reactor's containment field. Alarm screamed, the ship bucking as the reactor destabilized. Karlok howled in rage, charging forward, but Jeffrey was already moving, racing back towards Juno. "We have to go," he shouted, grabbing the Jem'Hadar's arm. "The ship's going to blow." Juno hesitated, his eyes on the super soldiers on the door that led to the brig, to his brother. But there was no time. The ship was tearing itself apart, the reactor's fury unleashed. They ran, the AI guiding them through the disintegrating ship, back to the hangar, to their shuttle. They blasted free, the battlecruiser collapsing behind them, a miniature sun erupting in the void. Jeffrey sagged in his seat, exhaustion and grief washing over him. Karlok was gone, the superweapon destroyed. But the cost? He glanced at Juno, saw the pain etched on the Jem'Hadar's face, the knowledge that his brother was lost, consumed in the fire of their victory. The shuttle limped away from the debris field, towards the distant glimmer of the Galactic Council fleet. Jeffrey knew there would be debriefings, celebrations, honors heaped upon them. but all he felt was hollow, the weight of what they had sacrificed pressing down on him. The AI murmured in his mind, a whisper of comfort, of shared sorrow. They had won, but the scars would linger, and deep in the shattered ruins of Karlok's flagship, amid the twisted wreckage and drifting corpses, something stirred. A hand, blackened and burned, clenched into a fist. A pair of eyes, smouldering with hate, snapped open. Karlok, his body broken, but his will unbroken, dragged himself from the rubble, a snarl twisting his lips. He would have his revenge. He would make the galaxy burn. And Jeffrey Wright, the human who had defied him, who had brought him to this, Karlok would see him suffer. The war was far from over. With the reactor core destabilizing rapidly, Jeffrey focused his AI-enhanced senses, reaching out to the ship's systems. He could feel the energy surging, the containment fields buckling. It was now or never. With a thought, he overrode the safety protocols, sending the reactor into a cataclysmic overload. The explosion was deafening, a blinding flash of plasma that ripped through the ship's hull like paper. Karlok, still locked in combat with Jeffrey, had no time to react. The blast consumed him, his body disintegrating in the searing heat. Jeffrey, shielded by the AI's force field, was hurled back, the breath knocked from his lungs. Alarms shrieked as the ship tore itself apart around him, bulkheads crumpling like tin foil. He scrambled to his feet, searching for an escape route. "There," the AI whispered in his mind, highlighting a breach in the hull. "Jump now!" Jeffrey leapt, propelled by the AI's power, just as the reactor reached critical mass. He cleared the ragged edge of the hull, the vacuum of space embracing him as the ship exploded behind him, a miniature supernova that bathed him in its deadly radiance. In the brig, Juno wrenched open the cell door, dragging his brother's emaciated form to his feet. The ship bucked and heaved, the deck tilting crazily. Juno half-carried, half-dragged his brother through the disintegrating corridors, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. They reached the escape pods just as the ship's artificial gravity failed, the suddenness of zero-G causing them to float free. Juno shoved his brother into a pod, slamming the hatch closed and punching the eject button. The pod blasted free, milliseconds before the ship vanished in a maelstrom of plasma and shrapnel. Jeffrey drifted in the void, the AI guiding his trajectory towards the Odyssey. He watched as Karlok's flagship disintegrated, the once mighty vessel reduced to a cloud of molten debris. A sense of grim satisfaction filled him, tempered by the knowledge of how close he had come to oblivion. The Odyssey's airlock cycled open, and Jeffrey clambered inside, his body aching from the stresses of combat and vacuum. Juno was already there, cradling his brother's frail form. The younger Jem'Hadar was barely conscious, his skin sallow and his eyes sunken. "Easy, soldier," Jeffrey said, kneeling beside them. "You're safe now." Juno's brother coughed, his voice a rasping whisper. "Karlok, he was just a pawn. There are others, the Crimson Blade." Jeffrey and Juno exchanged a look of concern. "The Crimson Blade?" Jeffrey asked. "Who are they?" "A secret society within the Jem'Hadar. They wanted to overthrow the council, establish a new order, with themselves at the top." Jeffrey's mind raced, the AI analyzing the implications. If Karlok was just one operative of this Crimson Blade, then the threat was far from over. They needed to warn the council, to root out this conspiracy before it could strike again. "Max, set a course for the Galactic Council headquarters," Jeffrey ordered, rising to his feet. "We've got a snake's nest to burn out." The Odyssey leapt into hyperspace, the stars blurring into streaks of light. Jeffrey and Juno tended to their wounds, the AI accelerating their healing as they prepared for the challenges ahead. But when they arrived at the Council's headquarters, they found themselves facing a wall of skepticism. The chambers were filled with muttering and hostile stares as Jeffrey presented their findings, the AI projecting images of the Crimson Blade's symbol and Karlok's ruined flagship. "This is absurd," a Xyrillian councillor scoffed, his scales rippling with agitation. The Jem'Hadar are a loyal and honorable race. They would never betray the Council. Others voiced their agreement, their prejudice against humans clear in their dismissive tones. Jeffrey could feel his frustration mounting, the AI whispering calming thoughts in his mind. "Councillors, please." Juno stepped forward, his voice ringing with conviction. "I am Jem'Hadar. I have seen the Crimson Blade's treachery firsthand. They are a cancer within our ranks, and they must be excised before they can do more harm." "And why should we trust the word of a single soldier?" a Chemtok delegate sneered. "For all we know, you could be one of them, trying to sow discord and confusion." Jeffrey slammed his fist on the podium, the AI amplifying his voice to a thunderous roar. "Enough! While you bicker and squabble, the Crimson Blade is out there plotting their next move. We need action, not accusations." The chamber fell silent, the councillors shifting uneasily in their seats. Jeffrey could see the doubt in their eyes, the reluctance to commit to a course of action without ironclad proof. "Very well," the Xyrillian councillor said at last, his tone grudging. "We will investigate these claims, but we will need more than just your word, human. Bring us concrete evidence of this Crimson Blade's existence and their plans. Then, and only then, will we act." Jeffrey clenched his jaw, the AI already formulating plans and strategies. They had bought some time, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. The Crimson Blade was out there, and they wouldn't rest until the Council was ashes. It was up to him and Juno to stop them, to shine a light into the shadows and root out the traitors. And with the AI at his side, Jeffrey knew they would not fail. The fate of the galaxy depended on it. Disguised in the jet-black armor of Crimson Blade recruits, Jeffrey and Juno slipped through the airlock of the hidden stronghold, a fortress carved into the heart of a massive asteroid. Towering turrets bristled from the pitted surface, ready to obliterate any unauthorized vessel. But thanks to the access codes they'd pilfered, the guns remained silent as they crept inside. The corridors were stark and utilitarian, lit by harsh red light. Crimson Blade soldiers marched past, their faces hidden behind featureless helmets. Jeffrey reached out with his AI-enhanced senses, probing the station's systems, searching for weaknesses. With a thought, he overrode the security sensors, looping the camera feeds and disabling the motion detectors. Juno shot him an impressed look as they moved deeper into the facility, undetected. They entered a cavernous hangar, filled with rows of sleek predatory fighters. Technicians swarmed over the ships, running diagnostics and loading ordnance. Jeffrey and Juno wove through the bustle, just two more faceless grunts among the Crimson Blade's ranks. At the far end of the hangar, a heavy blast door stood, guarded by a pair of hulking super soldiers. Their armor was thicker, their weapons more brutal. Genetic enhancements bulged beneath their skin, making them faster, stronger, more deadly. Jeffrey's AI whispered in his mind, analyzing the soldiers' movements, predicting their actions. With preternatural speed, he drew his blaster and fired, a staccato burst of plasma bolts that stitched across the soldiers' chests. They dropped without a sound, armor smoking. Juno rushed to the door, attaching a breaching charge. The explosion shook the deck, and they charged through the twisted metal, blasters ready. It was a laboratory, filled with tanks of bubbling liquid. Floating within, connected by a web of tubes and wires, were things. Twisted parodies of sapient life, genetic experiments gone horribly wrong. In one tank, a Zargonian, its forearms fused into a single grotesque appendage. In another, a Jem'Hadar, its skin replaced by chitinous armor plates. Dozens more, each a nightmarish fusion of flesh and technology. Found there in the center of the room, strapped to an operating table, was a face Jeffrey recognized. Zix, his old contact, his skin pale and his eyes haunted. "Zix!" Jeffrey rushed to his side, tearing at the restraints. "What have they done to you?" Zix's voice was a ragged whisper. "Jeffrey, you have to stop them. The Crimson Blade, they're not what you think." "I know, Zix. We're going to get you out of here." But Zix shook his head. "No, you don't understand. It's not the Jem'Hadar. It's Corbin." Elias Corbin. He's human, Jeffrey, a council agent. He's the one behind all of this, the Crimson Blade, the super soldiers. It's all him. Jeffrey's blood ran cold. A human, one of his own, orchestrating this nightmare. Where is he, Zix? Where's Corbin? The council. He's a minor official, but it's just a front. He's going to attack the council, Jeffrey. Cripple the galactic government. You have to stop him. Juno placed a hand on his shoulder. Jeffrey, we have to go if what Zix said is true. Jeffrey nodded, his jaw set. He accessed the lab's computers, his AI tearing through the firewalls, copying every scrap of data. Evidence. Proof of Corbin's treachery. Alarms began to blare, the harsh light shifting to a pulsing red. Corbin's forces alerted to their presence. They ran, blasting their way through the stronghold, leaving a trail of shattered bodies and sparking wreckage. Fighters scrambled to pursue as they blasted away from the asteroid, the Odyssey's engines screaming. But Jeffrey's mind was already racing ahead, to the council chambers, to the traitor in their midst. They had to reach the galactic capital before Corbin made his move, before the galaxy burned. The Odyssey tore through hyperspace, the stars smearing to infinite lines. Jeffrey paced the deck, his body taut with tension. As they dropped out of hyperspace above the council's headquarters, they were greeted by a scene of chaos. Ships burned, wreckage tumbling through space. The station itself, once a beacon of galactic unity, was pockmarked with blast scars, its hull breached in a dozen places. And there, amidst the carnage, was a fleet of ships bearing the crimson sigil of Corbin's forces. The attack had already begun. Jeffrey's hands flew over the controls, the Odyssey diving into the fray. They had to reach the council chambers, had to stop Corbin before it was too late. But as they carved a path through the enemy ships, Jeffrey couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing right into Corbin's hands, that this was all part of some greater plan, some twisted design they had yet to fathom. The Odyssey shuddered as a blast slammed into their shields. Alarms shrieked, consoles sparking. Jeffrey gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the ship on course. The council chambers loomed ahead, a shattered dome of glass and steel. They crashed through the shattered viewports, thrusters flaring as Jeffrey jammed the controls forward, sending the Odyssey hurtling towards the embattled council headquarters. Plasma fire from Corbin's ships sizzled past the hull, alarms blaring as the shields strained under the onslaught. "This is insane," Juno snarled, bracing himself against the console. "We'll be torn apart before we even reach the docking bay." Jeffrey gritted his teeth, the AI coursing through his mind, guiding his hands on the controls. "We don't have a choice. If Corbin takes the council, it's all over." With a bone-jarring impact, they slammed into the hangar deck, the Odyssey's landing gear crumpling under the strain. Jeffrey was out of his seat before the ship had stopped moving, blaster in hand, Juno close behind. The headquarters was in chaos, the once pristine corridors now littered with rubble and the bodies of the fallen. The sounds of battle echoed from all directions, the crack of blaster fire, the sizzle of plasma swords, the screams of the dying. Crimson Blade soldiers swarmed through the complex, their augmented bodies bristling with weaponry. At their head strode Zarthok, the traitorous Zargonian, his forearms each wielding a crackling energy blade. Jeffrey and Juno fought their way through the mayhem, back to back, their weapons spitting fire. Juno was a whirlwind of destruction, his Jem'Hadar training making him a lethal force on the battlefield. But even his skills were pushed to the limit by the sheer number of enemies they faced. "We need to split up," Jeffrey shouted over the din of battle. "You rally the council's defenses, buy me time to reach Corbin." Juno hesitated, torn between his desire for revenge and his duty. "Jeffrey, Corbin's too dangerous. You can't face him alone." With a curt nod, Juno peeled off, charging into a knot of Crimson Blade troopers with a roar of challenge. Jeffrey watched him go, a sudden tightness in his chest. If he failed, if Corbin won. Guided by the AI's tactical whispers, Jeffrey plunged deeper into the besieged headquarters. He moved like a ghost, slipping past enemy patrols, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dispatch any who stood in his way with brutal efficiency. As he neared the council chambers, the resistance intensified. Corbin's elite guard, each one a gene-forged monstrosity, barred his path. Jeffrey danced among them, his blaster and plasma sword weaving a deadly pattern, the AI guiding his every move. He burst into the chambers, the great doors blasted from their hinges, and there, standing amid the cowering council members, was Corbin. The rogue agent's face was a mask of cruel satisfaction, his eyes glinting with madness. Jeffrey Wright," he drawled, his voice dripping with mock cordiality. "The council's pet human, come to save the day." Corbin laughed, a harsh bark devoid of humor. "Surrender, when I'm so close to victory? You disappoint me, Jeffrey. I thought you, of all people, would understand." He began to pace, his steps measured, predatory. "The council is weak, Jeffrey, divided. They squabble and bicker while the galaxy burns. Only a strong hand can bring order, stability." "And you think that hand is yours?" Jeffrey scoffed. "You're nothing but a power-hungry madman, Corbin, a traitor to everything the council stands for." "The council stands for nothing," Corbin snarled, his composure slipping. "They're relics of a bygone age, clinging to their outdated ideals. But you and I, Jeffrey, we could change that. Together we could forge a new order, a new era of peace and prosperity." Jeffrey shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. "You still don't get it, do you? Peace isn't something you can impose, Corbin. It's something that has to be built through cooperation, understanding, not fear and brutality." Corbin's face contorted in rage. "Then you will die with the rest of them, clinging to your naive dreams." He lunged, plasma sword flaring to life. Jeffrey met him head-on, their blades clashing in a blaze of energy. They dueled across the chamber, a whirlwind of strike and counter-strike, the AI granting Jeffrey speed and strength beyond human limits. But Corbin was augmented too, his body a mesh of organic and synthetic, granting him reflexes and endurance to match Jeffrey's own. They were locked in a stalemate, neither able to gain the upper hand. "You fight well for a human," Corbin panted, their swords locked together. "But you're still weak, still bound by your petty morality. The galaxy needs order, Jeffrey. It needs to be ruled." "The galaxy needs freedom," Jeffrey countered, straining against Corbin's inhuman strength. "It needs choice, diversity. That's what makes us strong, not conformity, not subjugation." Corbin sneered. "Pretty words from a pretty fool, but words won't save you or your precious council." With a burst of strength, he shoved Jeffrey back, sending him crashing into a console. Jeffrey struggled to rise, his body aching, but Corbin was on him in an instant, his blade poised for the killing blow. And then the doors burst open, and Juno was there, his armor scorched and battered, a host of council loyalists at his back. They surged into the room, blaster fire raking the Crimson Blade soldiers who rushed to their master's aid. Corbin fell back, his face twisted in fury. "This isn't over," he snarled. "If I can't have the council, no one will." He raised his hand, and Jeffrey saw the detonator clutched in his fist. A fail-safe, a last resort to ensure the council's destruction. Time seemed to slow as Corbin's thumb descended towards the trigger, the AI screaming warnings in Jeffrey's mind. Jeffrey dived forward, his mind racing as he interfaced with the fail-safe's control panel. The AI surged through his neural pathways, its digital presence intertwining with his thoughts as they worked in unison to unravel the complex web of security protocols and override codes. But even with their combined efforts, the fail-safe remained stubbornly locked, its self-destruct sequence advancing with each passing second. Jeffrey gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his brow as he pushed his enhanced abilities to their limits. "It's no use," he gasped, his voice strained. "The system's too deeply integrated. We can't shut it down." The AI pulsed within his mind, its voice tinged with a grim realization. "There is another way," it whispered, "but it will require a sacrifice." Jeffrey's eyes widened as understanding dawned. The fail-safe's energy, if absorbed and redirected, could be neutralized. But the process would be fatal, the sheer power too much for any organic form to withstand. He glanced over his shoulder, his gaze locking with Juno's. The Jem'Hadar warrior stood amid the chaos of the battle, his face a mask of determination as he fought to protect the council members. "Juno!" Jeffrey called out, his voice cracking with emotion. "It's up to you now. Rebuild the council, keep the peace. Don't let our sacrifices be in vain." Juno's eyes widened, realization and grief warring in his expression. He opened his mouth to protest, but Jeffrey cut him off with a shake of his head. With a final defiant cry, Jeffrey plunged his hand into the failsafe's control panel, his fingers sinking into the glowing circuitry. Energy surged through his body, a searing white-hot agony that threatened to consume him entirely. The AI, its essence now fully merged with Jeffrey's consciousness, began to unravel, its code disintegrating under the onslaught of raw power. "Thank you," it whispered, its final thoughts a mix of gratitude and sorrow, "for showing me what it means to be human." Jeffrey's vision blurred, his senses overwhelmed by the torrent of energy coursing through his veins. With a monumental effort, he focused his will, channeling the failsafe's destructive potential upward through the headquarters structure and into the sky above. A blinding pulse of electromagnetic force erupted from the building's roof, a dazzling display of light and power that illuminated the battle-scarred cityscape. The energy dissipated harmlessly in the upper atmosphere, a final testament to Jeffrey's sacrifice. In the aftermath of the battle, Juno and the surviving council members emerged from the ruins of the headquarters, their faces streaked with grime and their hearts heavy with loss. They picked their way through the rubble, their eyes drawn to the scorched crater where Jeffrey had made his final stand. "He saved us all," a Xyrillian councillor murmured, her voice thick with emotion, "at the cost of his own life." Juno nodded, his jaw clenched tight. "Jeffrey Wright," he said, his words a solemn vow, "I will honor your memory. We all will." As the survivors began the long, arduous process of rebuilding, they carried with them the memory of a human who had given everything to secure a future for the galaxy. A future of unity, diversity, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.